Which is good. They all get a boy's grown up. Peace, everyone, and thank you so much for joining another episode of Darker Than Blue, the show where we talk about politics for the people who you just heard Brother Curtis Mayfield say are darker than blue. That's me and you, y'all. Thank you so much for joining me on this gorgeous Friday spring afternoon, this beautiful Good Friday, if you observe, and I do. It is beautiful. I would rather be outside. I'm sure you would rather be outside, but I thank you for joining me today because I'm really, really excited that I finally get to have this conversation about something I just experienced. Just came back from Venezuela a few weeks ago, just last month, and was able to see what happened in Venezuela. With my own eyes and talk to the people of Venezuela with my own mouth and hear what they had to say with my own ears. And as time has gone and we have seen the news being reported by the US about Venezuela, a lot of it's been a little suspicious, at least to me. So I really wanted to not just convey what I saw and heard and learned. I really wanted somebody to come from Venezuela to talk to you about what is really happening in the country and what's really behind all of this. So let me stop talking and editorializing and introduce you to my comrade and dear friend, Christian Peak. Is it Peak or Pitch Ortiz, who is a youth militant for Cimarronage, for Cimarronage. You know what that is, y'all. A Bolivarian and a Chavista. Christian, thanks so much for joining me today. I'm so glad you're able to join us.
Thank you, comrade. I'm very glad to be here. And yeah, the comrades call me Peach.
Pitch. Okay, cool. So how did we meet? This is, I think this is really great. How did we meet? And we actually have connections with somebody else on this platform that we found out when I got there. So how did we meet?
Well, by being very literal, we met at the airport. Thanks to my current job, I am not representing that job in this moment. But yes, I do work at the Simon Bolivar Institute for Peace and Solidarity Amongst the People, which is a place of recognition of the struggles around the world for that beautiful brigade that the comrades did from different organizations from the US to come to Venezuela and see the reality for themselves. But before that, yes, we did have a connection, and that's my great comrade Nefta.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. So NETFA has been working with this organization and this young man for a while. And I did not know until I met him at the airport in Venezuela because he met the delegation. He was one of our guides and one of our translators. And we had fantastic conversation. Because, see, I've already talked about all of this with Christian, everything that I'm going to talk to you about today. And the thing that happened
Yeah.
was, this is why you can't trust technology all of the time. I had my phone and I actually recorded a short interview with you, Christian, but something happened with the phone where the interview actually didn't record. So I said, you know
Wow.
what? Okay, fine. Let's just have it back. Let's just have him on. Um, so that is what we did. So let's get into this conversation. So we all know that President Maduro and first combatant and uh, National Assembly Congresswoman, because she is a
Yes.
Congresswoman of the National Assembly, Celia Flores, were illegally, violently, reprehensibly kidnapped from Venezuela in the pre-dawn hours of January 3rd. They are still in being held hostage by the United States government in New York City. We just had a pretty large demonstration in front of the detention center on the 28th, on February 28th, 6, I think it was 26, when when they were when they appeared before court. The U.S. government has denied the Venezuelan government the ability to pay for the attorneys for
Yeah.
Maduro and Flores, which is unprecedented because allegedly in this country, under this system, you're supposed to have the right to have legal representation. So
Hmm.
how a case can go forward in U.S. courts based on, pun not intended, but fabricated, let me not say the other word, fabricated charges. Um, but now without legal representation, how that's going to happen, I don't know. And also, there is the issue of the fact that the charges are bogus. They've already fallen apart.
Yes.
This so-called gang that he was supposed to be ahead of was a made-up thing. So all of this is made up, but they're still being detained. And I'm seeing folks on the chat say that there's an echo on your end. So I'm not sure if you can adjust something there. But now, since we have watch this play out, and we know that the U.S. government are in Venezuela. There are quote unquote negotiations going on between the U.S. government and its represented representatives and the interim president Delcy Rodriguez. And the U.S. is reporting a lot of strange things, or I should say, they're reporting on things in a strange way, in a way that makes it seem like Delcy Rodriguez is coordinating and complying with the US government, which kind of makes it seem like um, regime change has happened. So I wanted to talk to you, someone in Venezuela, someone who is a Chavista, someone who is a strong supporter of the Bolivarian government and is certainly in the country seeing what's going on, knowing what's going on far more than we do. I figured, let me stop with the conjecture and let's talk about this. So, what is going on with the U.S. government in talks with Delcy Rodriguez? What is the U.S. doing? What are you all being told? What's going on in Venezuela right now, Christian?
Okay, I hope you can hear me better. But yes, it is an issue that might seem extremely complex to explain. But you definitely need to understand first of all the Venezuelan constitution. Second of all, what it means to negotiate. It is no joke that we are negotiating with the empire, with that country of the global north that has the biggest military budget in the world. We have to understand how the negotiation, and I think there's a great division that Humberto Gonzalez does, that is constituent power and power that is constituted. So, el poder constituido, that power that is already uh, in constitution, is the government, and constituent power is the people. In Venezuela, thanks to the 1999 constitution, we believe in participative protagonic democracy. This means that everyone is a part of the construction of the Bolivarian revolutionary project. And we understand that the decisions that our head of state is doing is all of the decisions necessary for negotiation, while we, the people, sustain popular power, sustain the Bolivarian principles, sustain everything that is ours. And there is a great letter that I recommend. If I'm not mistaken, it is from the year 1825 by Simón Bolívar to José Antonio José de Sucre, in which he explained how is it so important to understand negotiation at risk of two people. He says to Sucre, because in this moment the Saint Alliance with France on its head was threatening to invade Venezuela. So he says to Sucre, you need to negotiate with these people. And if necessary, you need to understand that negotiation is a conflict in which the two parts are at risk and in which negotiating will be always better than war. This is what the Bolivarian doctrine proposes. We need to understand that this conflict is not just, or of course, the US is interested in our resources. There is no doubt of that. And also at its core, it is the conflict between the the Monroe Doctrine, and the doctrine of Simon Bolivar, the Bolivarian doctrine. That is what's going on. Just right now, that in 26th of June, we're going to turn 200 years of the Amphictyonic Congress of Panama. Such a beautiful project of the Union of Nations under republics, non-monarchical, that proposed to have a common agenda for the continent, the first time in the history of humanity. Way before the UN. That's what Bolivar proposed. Who did it? Monroe. Monroe stopped it, thanks to Santander. This is what we're seeing nowadays. Venezuela has a proposal, the communal state in transition to socialism. We're fighting for that. That is the Bolivarian revolution. We have given more than 5 million homes to the people. We have given thousands of rights, universal education. We have some of the highest rates in the world of university students studying, and some of the lowest floating populations of high school students. We have given the fight for alphabetization was huge thanks to the Bolivarian Revolution. The amount of things the Bolivarian Revolution has done is countless, and it's thanks to the communal project. That is at the essence. An empire, an oligarchy, more to say, because we believe deeply in the union of the US people with the people of Venezuela and the people of the Bolivarian project, because the Bolivarian project is more than Venezuela. It's much more than Venezuela. This is so important to understand. We believe in that union, but we understand that the oligarchy, the elite of the US, cannot accept this. We have been growing for more than 2 years consecutively as the highest growth rate of the entire continent. 9% of economic growth rate was going on in Venezuela. And that's when they attack. That is when they attack. And now we see their actions in Iran. It's not just by coincidence. They cannot accept that our model is working. And now we have to negotiate so that model can keep on working. And that is what we see in the streets every day. My work is still going on. The work of the people, we're all working. We're going to have many meetings in the communes. There's much more many meetings than ever before. The popular council that occurred on the 8th of March was highly successful. I can speak of the national example, but just to see from the territory, from my territory, we have 8 communes and communal circuits. And never before had I seen the amount of youth that voted. In Turwa, the Angel Marcano commune, we could have maybe in the first popular councils, they weren't as popular. My municipality is a very hard municipality for Chavismo because it is a municipality where the opposition has democratically won the mayorship for 25 years. There are mayorships of the opposition. They're very little because Venezuela supports Chavismo, but you can start understanding the propaganda that they try to sell, that it is impossible for the opposition to exist. That is not true. In Venezuela, there is an opposition, a democratic opposition that is not Maria Corina Machado's. But even then, well, yes, of course. But even then, Venezuelans, now thanks to the 3rd of January, comprehend the importance of upholding everything that we've won. That from 20 to 30 voters of the youth in Angel Marcano, we went to more than 151 voters of the youth. Just like that. One popular consult. We're more active than ever. We're more active than ever. We're holding our principles firm because people understand that the Bolivarian project is crucial to the continent. It is crucial to the future. And yeah, does that mean that we have to see changes in the decisions of our government, that we have to see some difficult stuff, but we also see very centered decisions? The change of ministries has been something very well accepted by the population because we see that these figures are, moving the pieces for the project to be upheld. New teams, new people, new decisions of more democratic. For example, the Ministry of Eco-Socialism recently changed. The Ministry of Popular Power for Socialism now holds every Wednesday a consult with all of the social movements and communes that conform part of the Ministry of Eco-Socialism. We are popularizing the projects in understanding that our main government has to negotiate to surf the wave, so to speak, in the current geopolitical situation of the world. And we're supported fully fully because we want Nicolas Maduro and Silvio Flores to be back home.
So I think I'm hearing what I think we recognize happened in Iran, but we didn't seem to understand that that may also be what is happening in Venezuela. It is that as much as the US government thought that they could come in, do a horrible, violent act, and completely take over and change things, what happened instead was maybe that act woke some complacent people up and realized, wait a minute, we have to defend this. We have to defend this. This isn't a
Yeah.
foregone conclusion that we're going to be left alone. No, they have not left us. They haven't left us alone. We have to defend this, and we have to do it consciously and together. And now there is more cohesion in Venezuela. There is more complete solidarity. Even and I want to ask you about the right wing, because that was an interesting thing that you just said. We discovered when we went to Venezuela that the right wing had a unique response to the kidnapping, which I think gives a very interesting perspective on the right wing in Venezuela that we don't understand. So how did they respond to this horrible kidnapping in Venezuela, the right wing that is I'm not exactly sure what people in the US think the right wing is. We've seen how they act. We regard them very much in the same way that we regard the right wing anti Castro Cubans in Miami. Um, so how did they respond? You Because we would think they would be excited about what happened on January 3rd, but what happened?
I think actually, I'm going to keep talking from my municipality because it's such a great way to explain it. Because you see, I got my neighborhood got bombed just 2 streets away from me. In my house, you can see the cracks that got wider because of the bombs. 2 trees fell on top of my home because of the bombs. And this municipality that they've so believed, some of them, because the truth is that the right wing of Venezuela is a very disorganized political side of the spectrum, because truly we have gotten so many retributions and so many advancements from the Bolivarian revolution that for them to organize a true opposition, they will need to fight against the material reality that the Venezuelan people have gotten thanks to the revolution. And that is very hard doing from a right wing perspective because, capitalism does not work for the people. But for those municipalities that mine, that they have won historically, I remember, I even had some conversations with neighbors. Oh, I hope the gringos do something. Oh, I hope the Navy do something. After this happened, many of them came back to me and they were like, what are we going to do now? I cannot believe this happened. They were scared. They didn't know what to do. And now they're starting to understand. They're starting that process of dialogue. They're starting because you get your neighbors. They were 36 homes affected, 9 homes completely destroyed, just 2 streets away from me. Do you think my mayor, and I'm going to say this with any responsibility that I might take, but my mayor in the municipality of El Atillo hasn't said a thing about the 3rd of January? That is the right wing that composes Venezuela, except for one thing. Now he's opening up to the dialogue because he said with dignity that they couldn't accept such invasion. The rest of his team, the people that supported the right wing, completely like it's a patriotic feeling because what happened was unprecedented, was awful, was extremely awful, and you can see it in the National Assembly. The opposition, yes, they have their political points, but there's one common point that is the defense of Venezuela's sovereignty amongst all of them. Everyone in the right wing of Venezuela, they were extremely interested in the defense of our sovereignty, and they stood their ground. They understood that this couldn't happen because taking a constitutional precedent just like that violates any form of international law. And you can see the commentaries, not only in my community, but everywhere. About the people saying, "Oh, I might not support Maduro, but this is completely wrong." That is such a general feeling of the right wing of Venezuela, even though it's been ever so more like weakened because of the events of the January 3rd. It exists, definitely, and they're mostly patriotic people. But more and more, you can see the political change through the dialogue that is occurring because they understand that defending the Bolivarian project is so crucial. And many of them are standing with us now. That's just the reality of things. And in which, wow, wow, wow. Yes.
Imperialists, the arrogance of Western imperialists, thinking that bombs can solve problems, that if you want something that belongs to somebody else, all you have to do is, terrify people into submission. And Venezuela has proven that that is not the way it's going to be done. That's not going to happen there. But I think we can more easily see it in Iran than we could in Venezuela because there was no ongoing kinetic conflict. But there are some things that are going on that the U.S. has reported out that I think they've reported out in a way that obviously tries to disparage or cast suspicion onto Delcy Rodriguez. And I think that's done for a reason. But I don't want to editorialize too much because that's why I have you here talking about this. So we were told about the amnesty law that the interim government in Venezuela has agreed to this U.S. demand for this amnesty law to let what they claim were political prisoners, right wing, opposition members who had been locked up for committing crimes. Um, that this amnesty law was passed that the U.S. wanted, and the Venezuelan government capitulated and passed this amnesty law. And now all of these psychotic right wing people are going to be let out of jail to run the streets and terrorize people in Venezuela on behalf of the U.S. again. That's what we were told about the amnesty law, that this was a capitulation to the U.S. What is really happening with the amnesty law? What is it really? Who does it give amnesty to? And
Mhm.
is it a unique a piece of legislation that the U.S. just came up with?
No, this is not the first time we've done an amnesty law in Venezuela. Not the first time. Chavez did the first one. I don't remember the exact year. It was the early 2000s. After many of the, uh, for example, many of the awful things that occurred in 2002 in the attempt in the that occurred in the 11th of April, 11th, 12th, and 13th of April. You can see about that in the documentary Puente Llaguno, Keys of a Massacre. And then you can understand why the amnesty law occurred because Chavez was a very forgiving person, even with everything that happened. And this is the same thing. Like Nicolas Maduro was talking about the importance of the process of reconciliation with the people that were being judicially processed since a while ago. Uh, this is not something that just occurred out of nowhere, and it is a very important thing. There's a great document that you can read in the PSUV International Telegram group, which has the English version about the amnesty law that is being led by Jorge Arreaza, in which you understand, first of all, the real numbers, because the true number of these supposed, and I'm going to say these huge air quotes, political prisoners were not the ones that the NGOs were saying. They were saying thousands and thousands and thousands. It was around 300 people. And then most of the people were in a judicial process, so being revised mm, by a judge or in the process of the fiscalia, like with the papers. because of the acts that occurred within, especially the last presidential election. And I can say this with confidence because many comrades, like myself, got our lives threatened by and there were more. There were, if I'm not mistaken, it was more than 20 people murdered by the fascist right wing extremist opposition that was more so imposed in Venezuela by Maria Corina Machado, the hatred that they wanted to impose on our people. And these cases of murder are not under the amnesty law. Nothing about murder, drug trafficking. Um, there's many cases that are not in they cannot be appealed. But many cases, like the people that were protesting, the people that were trying to build guarimbas, the people that were, you know, threatening people through the internet, those cases were revised. And in those revisions, it was decided which would fall under the amnesty law for a new process of dialogue under the nation. This is to understand the same process of dialogue that we need to have in the unity of patriotism. You know, I think that is a good correlation of strategy. Of course, this process comes from before. Just like I said, Nicolas Maduro talked about the importance of entering a process of dialogue with the opposition of Venezuela. Because, you know, we understand that a lot of these people are everyday working class people that get pushed to hatred thanks to cognitive warfare that is constantly falling on top of well, everywhere in the world, but especially on top of Venezuelans through social media, through, you know, the denial of everything that of the revenue of the things that the revolution has accomplished. And what can be, it can be dangerous minorities, many of them that were out trying to, you know, build the same narratives into reality. We are now trying to open a dialogue process with them. And this is something that we see, that we saw as crucial from way before. We understood that the revolution has to be for everyone. The revolution, the Bolivarian project, is a project of not just a nation of nations, like Bolivar said. And this means um, fighting back cognitive warfare, opening a process of dialogue with these people that did not commit violent crimes, but that were part of the attempt of violence during the last presidential elections, and, you know, a new chance for a bigger process of the defense of our sovereignty that is now very needed in the country.
So, what we believe is just a blanket. Well, no, let me say this. What we believe the US government did, because a lot of people believe that this amnesty law did what Donald Trump did when he pardoned all of the January 6th people who were locked up, who were, you know, went to trial and were found guilty and put in prison. He pardoned all those people along with a bunch of other just very rich criminals. So that's what people here were kind of thinking the amnesty law would do in Venezuela, and that every member of the right wing, regardless of what they did, even the ones who literally set people on fire and burned them alive, the people are thinking that that's what the amnesty law does. It lets those people out, and that is absolutely not true at all. And wasn't the first time. This is not the first time an amnesty law has been passed in Venezuela. And listen, I would I do it? Were I the leader of a country? Everybody who knows me would say no. Jacqueline would never do that because Jacqueline is petty and vindictive. But this is why I am not the leader of a country, and I probably shouldn't be. So I'm happy to hear that truly cooler heads, much more disciplined and strategically mature people are in charge of the Bolivarian revolution. That makes me happy, and it's great to 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 confirm that our fears about that particular news are they're misplaced. So recently, we
Mm.
get another piece of news about allegedly Delcy Rodriguez having sanctions removed. The US
Mhm.
government, I guess, removed sanctions that were imposed against her. And
Mhm.
of course, the way that was reported was just to make it seem that, okay, this is a reward for Delcy Rodriguez playing nice with the US government, which seems like she's betraying the Bolivarian revolution, and she's about to turn Venezuela over to the US government, if not all of the Venezuelan oil. What is really happening there?
Okay, so in this case, I'm gonna be very clear. This is my opinion and analysis through the things that we can see and the documents that we can read. Of course, I'm not the head of state or any sort of importance, so I cannot tell you like, oh yeah, this is why we're doing this exactly. But I can give an analysis on what I see. There's a great documentation that you can search for online from the Anti-Blockade Observatorium of Venezuela. And also, this, if you want to hear about it, there's a great chapter that just released yesterday of a podcast called Outside of the Box, Fuera de la Caja, of the Francisco de Miranda Front, with William Castillo, who is the president of the Anti-Blockade Observatorium that speaks specifically about sanctions, about Venezuelan sanctions, and what we call MCUs, coercive unilateral measurements. And you have to understand deeply that just Delcy Rodriguez said it herself. We expect that this is a step towards eliminating coercive unilateral measurements against Venezuela to keep on building the necessary relations for the future. The fact that they only released the sanctions against the figure of Delcy Rodriguez, I think it's even more of a cognitive warfare move to try and make it seem like the alleged things that they used to say. Oh, Nicolas Maduro has 1,000,000 kilograms of gold saved up in a little island on the north of I don't know where. They always said stuff like, oh, Delcy Rodriguez has 1,000,000 houses in some country. And this is the narrative that they wanted to impose on Venezuela to delegitimize ¿cómo se dice? To delegitimize the figure of our head
Delegitimize, yes.
And it was to make it seem like the Bolivarian Revolution was not a project of the people and popular power, but a project of individuals that took power by force. This was the narrative that they have imposed for how many years? They said that about Chavez. When the people couldn't deny, not even a right wing could deny the huge popular love that people have for Chavez, more than 4 days of the funeral from the amount of millions of people that came to see the tomb. Then they started saying it about Maduro. Then they start putting certain sanctions on people so they cannot make diplomatic moves, so they cannot be true representatives of the Bolivarian Revolution in the International Court of Law, in the places that were supposed to defend the international law. And now suddenly they take sanctions, but only of Delcy. Only of Delcy. That is part of trying to build the same narrative that is about heads of state that had all of these things. And I was like, oh, this is the little gift to you, because now, thanks to the bountiful, plentiful US government, you, Delcy Rodriguez, will be able to have your little Willy Wonka golden ticket. Come on. Be for real. And Delcy said herself, we expect that this is a step into taking sanctions off Venezuela, because that is what truly matters. And I recommend deeply to read the documents on unilateral coercive measurements from William Castillo and the podcast Fuera de la Caja that explains it so perfectly, because it truly destroyed what we were trying to build, but we built it back up stronger than ever, and we're still doing so. So yeah, they can do those moves all they want, that they can try to sell us their narratives of cognitive warfare. We're just expecting that the negotiation keeps on going so we can soon see Venezuela without sanctions, so they can start seeing what the Bolivarian project truly is about. The truth is that I believed in this. I believe in this. Me. Picture this. The truth is that they constantly undermine the power of the people. They're extremely sober, and they believe that they have us under the same hand that they have constructed through narrative. They truly believe that we are like, oh yes, bountiful Donald Trump. And they don't understand that we're extremely conscious of the huge mistake that they're doing in Iran, and that they depend on us now if they want to keep on going with their hegemony. But we're not going to let it happen, because we don't believe in that process. We believe in the Bolivarian doctrine, and they do not have that on count. So I believe in the negotiations of the Bolivarian peace diplomacy project.
And there's never enough time. So we've got to wrap this up, but I want to ask you for the final word for the listeners here at WPFW, and not the final, because this is not the last time I'm going to have Christian on to talk about what's going on in Venezuela, because I want to know about communes. I want to talk more about the market for the fisher folk that we visited, and the initiative that they have. I want to talk more about the urbanisms. I want to talk more about how Venezuela, I want to talk about those 5 million houses, 5 million housing units built and provided for the people, working class and poor
For
people,
free.
for free. We got to talk about all of this, because these are the kinds of things we want. And this is what this government doesn't want us, particularly working class and poor, African, indigenous, and other people on the bottom here. This is what they do not want us to know. So, yes, I'm going to have you come back, because we need to know that a better world is possible. And it's something different when somebody who lives in that world comes and talks about that world than when I tell you that it exists. So, will you come back again to talk more about these things? Wonderful,
Yes, of course.
fantastic,
I
fantastic.
mean,
So, I want to give you the last word. What do you want to leave for the people here listening, WPFW, Washington, D.C., not predominantly African anymore, but it's still enough of us to matter. But there are plenty of leftists, socialists, progressives who are feeling frustrated, downtrodden, afraid, don't know what to do right now in this moment under this particular regime in this country. What words of encouragement do you have for us here inside the beating heart of imperialism?
comrades, and this is something I learned thanks to you all, the people that have come here, the international comrades that have come to delegations. And it is that not only has there been a veil of untruthfulness and lies surrounding Venezuela in the international mediums, but also that something that we need to understand deeply is that the project of Bolivar is not a national project. It's not a project of one country. It is a project of the people. It is a project of humanity. It is a project of what does it mean to build a freedom life, just like Bolivar said, la suprema felicidad, supreme happiness. And when you start understanding that, first of all, Venezuela was never just a national project until 1830, after Bolivar died and was treasoned by Baez. But why do I say this? Because the things that we are seeing in the geopolitical spectrum of the world make us understand that this hemisphere is crucial to the struggle of the people all around the world. It's no longer just a global south versus global north conflict. It is and only a conflict of the people against oligarchy. The Bolivarian project comprehends itself within internationalism always. So whenever you see the accomplishments that Venezuela has had as a revolution, remember that it is the accomplishments we were building for the entire continent. Petrocaribe, the project that Chavez had in Haiti, the project that Chavez had in the Bronx. These are things that we understand from the Bolivarian perspective because we can no longer expect for the struggle to stop. It is time for the people of the world to rise in mass popular revolution, but that has to be done step by step together as the people. The moment we see the huge violence and the rise of violence in West Asia against Iran, against Palestine, is the moment we need to understand as the people of the US, as the people of Venezuela, as the people of this continent, that it is time to struggle. And it is time to struggle together. It is time to struggle understanding our history. And in my personal preference, the Amphictyonic Congress of Panama, the Constitution of Bolivia, and the Constitution of 1999 by Hugo Rafael Chavez Frias and the Venezuelan people that says a different model is possible. That is what I want to share. Whenever I speak of the things that have occurred in my country, I'm only speaking of the things I want to occur in the continent. Communal state in transition to socialism is possible, and we can all find different models that can conjoin, just like Bolivar said, in a confederation of nations. Or like my huge Zapatista friend would say, a world where many worlds fit in. So I hope that every word that comes out of my heart can get to your heart in understanding that this is necessary. And the last battle, the last stand of the people will be in this hemisphere. I have no doubt of it. So we must get ready for a world where humanity is possible, for a more humane humanity, like Ali Primera would say. So thank you for the opportunity. Let's keep connection, let's keep contact, and the struggle is on.
Indeed, it is. Christian Ortiz, thank you so much for joining us. We are out of time for this segment, so you know what that means, dear friends and listeners. It is time. We're a little bit over time, but that's okay for a WPFW station break. So, engineer extraordinaire, what do we have on tap for the people today? Thanks, Christian. Oh, where's my engineer? Okay, I think my engineer is not ready for our station break, and that's okay. So let me show you what we have on tap this weekend. And let's see. Whoops, there we go. Really giving me a problem. Here we go. I think. Why are you really just having a seriously hard time? There we go. All right. Sorry about the weird look. But I want to um, read this document to you so that you can see, or you can hear rather, what is actually being said. Because I'm sure we've all heard about the letter that was written from the president of Iran to the American people before Trump's crazy, unhinged, I don't know what he was talking about, don't make me talk about it speech last night, because it made no sense then, doesn't make any sense now, and it was a mess. But I want to read the letter that President of Iran, President Masoud Pezeshkian, wrote to the American people before Trump's speech. This is the full text of the letter. He says, "In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, to the people of the United States of America and to all those who, amid a flood of distortions and manufactured narratives, continue to seek the truth and aspire to a better life. Iran, by this very name, character, and identity, is one of the oldest continuous civilizations in human history. Despite its historical and geographical advantages at various times, Iran has never, in its modern history, chosen the path of aggression, expansion, colonialism, or domination. Even after enduring occupation, invasion, and sustained pressure from global powers, and despite possessing military superiority over many of its neighbors, Iran has never initiated war. Yet it has resolutely and bravely repelled those who have attacked it. The Iranian people harbor no enmity toward other nations, including the people of America, Europe, or neighboring countries. Excuse me, even in the face of repeated foreign interventions and pressures throughout their proud history, Iranians have consistently drawn a clear distinction between governments and the peoples they govern. This is deeply rooted. This is a deeply rooted principle in Iranian culture and collective consciousness, not a temporary political stance. For this reason, portraying Iran as a threat is neither consistent with historical reality nor with present day observable facts. Such a perception is the product of political and economic whims of the powerful, the need to manufacture an enemy in order to justify pressure, maintain military dominance, sustain the arms industry, and control strategic markets. In such an environment, if a threat does not exist, it is invented. Within this same framework, the United States has concentrated the largest number of its forces, bases, and military capabilities around Iran, a country that, at least since the founding of the United States, 250 years, has never initiated a war. Recent American aggressions launched from these very bases have demonstrated how threatening such a military presence truly is to Iran. Naturally, no country confronted with such conditions would forego strengthening its defensive capabilities. What Iran has done and continues to do is a measured response, grounded in legitimate self defense and by no means an initiation of war or aggression. Relations between Iran and the United States were not originally hostile, and early interactions between the Iranian and American people were not marred with hostility or tension. The turning point, however, was the 1953 coup d'etat, an illegal American intervention aimed at preventing the nationalization of Iran's own resources. The coup disrupted Iran's democratic process, reinstated dictatorship, and sowed deep mistrust among Iranians toward U.S. policies. The distrust deepened further with American support for the Shah's regime, its backing of Saddam Hussein during the imposed war of the 1980s, the imposition of the longest and most comprehensive sanctions, the coercive measures in modern history, and ultimately unprovoked military aggression, twice in the middle of negotiations against Iran. Yet all of these pressures have failed to weaken Iran. On the contrary, the country has grown stronger in many areas. Literacy rates have tripled from roughly 30% before the Islamic Revolution during the Shah's regime to over 90% today. Higher education has expanded dramatically. Significant advances have been achieved in modern technology. Healthcare services have improved, and infrastructure has developed at a pace and scale incomparable to the past. These are measurable, observable realities that stand independent of fabricated narratives. At the same time, the destructive and inhumane sanctions or impact of sanctions, war, and aggression on the lives of the resilient Iranian people must not be underestimated. The continuation of military aggression and recent bombings profoundly affect people's lives, attitudes, and perspectives. This reflects a fundamental human truth. When war inflicts irreparable harm on lives, homes, cities, and futures, people will not remain indifferent toward those responsible. This raises a fundamental question. Exactly which of the American people's interests are truly being served by this war? They're asking questions that too many of us are not. Was there any objective threat from Iran to justify such behavior? No, there was not. Does the massacre of innocent children, the destruction of cancer treatment facilities, or boasting about bombing a country back to the Stone Ages serve any purpose other than further damaging the United States' global standing? Iran pursued negotiations, reached an agreement, and fulfilled all its commitments. The decision to withdraw from that agreement, escalate toward confrontation, and launch two acts of aggression in the midst of negotiations were destructive choices made by the U.S. government. Choices that served the delusions of a foreign aggressor, Israel. Attacking Iran's vital infrastructure, including energy and industrial facilities, directly targets the Iranian people. Beyond constituting a war crime, such actions carry consequences that extend far beyond Iran's borders. They generate instability, increase human and economic costs, and perpetuate cycles of tension, planting seeds of resentment that will endure for years. This is not a demonstration of strength. It is a sign of strategic bewilderment and an inability to achieve a sustainable solution. Is it not also the case that America has entered this aggression as a proxy for Israel, influenced and manipulated by that regime? Is it not true that Israel, by manufacturing an Iranian threat, seeks to divert global attention away from its crimes towards the Palestinians? Is it not evident that Israel now aims to fight Iran to the last American soldier and the last American taxpayer dollar, shifting the burden of its delusions onto Iran, the region, and the United States itself in pursuit of illegitimate interests? Is America First truly among the priorities of the U.S. government today? I invite you to look beyond the machinery of misinformation, an integral part of this aggression, and instead speak to those who have visited Iran. Observe the many accomplished Iranian immigrants educated in Iran who now teach and conduct research at the world's most prestigious universities or contribute to the most advanced technology firms in the West. Do these realities align with the distortions you are being told about Iran and its people? Today, President Pekezian says, the world stands at a crossroads. Continuing along the path of confrontation is more costly and futile than ever before. The choice between confrontation and engagement is both real and consequential. Its outcome will shape the future for generations to come. Throughout its millennia of proud history, Iran has outlasted many aggressors. All that remains of them are tarnished names in history, while Iran endures, resilient, dignified, and proud. So, I will drop the link to this letter in the chat on YouTube for you all. I invite you listening on WPFW to please go to Palestine Chronicles on the web and read that letter from the president of Iran to the American people. Answer the questions he is asking us in that letter and ask yourself why you weren't asking these questions yourselves. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for joining Darker Than Blue today. Blessed Good Friday and blessed Resurrection Weekend to those of you who observe. Extra and special blessings of protection to all people of all faiths or none at all in the regions affected by U.S. and Western imperialism. And as always, my friends and comrades, a luta continua, the struggle continues. But if we keep fighting for true liberation and a world of peace, Victoria Acerta, victory is certain. Until next time, stay tuned for News Views with Garland Nixon. Peace.
We people who are darker than blue. See you, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
And let what
All right. I see you in the chat. You think I'm not going to cuss on Good Friday? Really? Let me turn off this Zoom. Because, man, these people's be pissing me off around here. Oh Lord, I don't know. I don't know what the hell to say about all of the Venezuela is on fire. Delcy Rodriguez is selling the people out, and Delcy is she's an agent of the U.S. and they didn't change the regime. And the man, shut the fuck up. Shut up. I really have just been like, can we not? And listen, it's hard for me. I am learning to be a lot more disciplined in the way I move, in the things I say. I know that there are levels of success for that. I know. You don't have to tell me. I'm a mess. But I am working on being more disciplined, and because look, I don't just represent myself anymore as much as I want to think that I do, and I am a part of something bigger than me. And that's okay. I think at first I was really nervous about that. Well, no, I know at first I was very nervous about that. Because listen, organization is a serious thing, but it's not a serious thing for everybody, and I understand that not everybody takes organization as like a life and death thing, but I do, and a lot of people who are organizers do, because look at where we are. I mean, what we are organizing against is a life and death thing, and it takes a little while for some people to really understand the gravity of the moment that we are in, and to have to understand the context of it, accurately, to understand that it is bigger than whatever they think their narrow solutions of reform are. It takes a while for people to understand. And I think that is the thing that frustrates us long-term organizers so much about things like the No Kings protest, because we are kind of realizing, okay, these folks don't really understand that this is the solutions they are presenting are not the solutions that are going to stop any of this. And it's wonderful that, they say that 8 million people were out in the streets in this country, and that's great. That's great. Because that was, I guess what was the largest pro-Palestine demonstration. That was maybe a few million people more than were out in the street. Okay, fine. That's fantastic. But if you're not connecting those 8 million, 5 million, 2 million people to other organizations, to real organizations, that connect all of the issues. Come on, bud. My dog is very polite because he asks for permission to get on his chase. I've given the dog the chase because he's on it all the time. But he asks for permission all of the time, every single time, to get on the chase. And it's the most adorable thing. So sorry, that was the little, but yes, we do have to, those people do need to be connected to real organizations so they can learn that this is not going to fix these things. This is not going to fix, you know. And I know people are very much like, hey, you radicals need to be out there in the streets and recruit these people. Let me explain something to you. I was at the first No Kings demonstration that was held on the same day as a pro-Palestine demonstration. And so I wasn't actually at the No Kings demonstration. I was at the Palestine demonstration because we had already committed to support that demonstration and participate in that demonstration, and that's what we did. So we found out that that first No Kings demonstration in DC was scheduled on the same day as the Palestine demonstration. That was violation number one. Do you understand? From a from an organizer's perspective, that's the kind of thing you don't do. I mean, we're in the middle of a genocide. There are several genocides going on, and the Palestinian Youth Movement, SJP, Students for Justice in Palestine, other organizations, Answer Coalition, PSL, and Black Alliance for Peace, and a whole bunch of other organizations consistently had pro-Palestine, anti-genocide protests that were very visible, that everybody saw, everybody knew. So there was no reason to schedule any demonstration on the same day that an anti-genocide protest was going on, but that's what they did. They scheduled the first No Kings protest on the same day that a pro-Palestine protest. At the same time. At the same time. That was a violation, as far as I'm concerned. That was an enormous act of disrespect. But even before that happened, I was on one of the organizing calls for that No Kings protest because a comrade was connected with one of these groups that was involved in them and said, hey, I really think you should be on this call. I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. Get on the call. I hear these white people talking. And I live in Washington, D.C. Okay, we're not majority Black anymore, but it's enough of us still here that you should not have some white person talking to the. So I'm on this call and I'm listening to these people say these very bullshit liberal things. It's all Trump, Trump, Trump. We need to get rid of Trump, Trump, Trump. Okay, yeah, you do. But who you think gonna do it? Who's gonna do it? What, this Congress? And once Trump is gone, who do you think is going to take his place? The vice president. So what you going to do with them? And then what you going to do with Congress? Then what are we talking about in regard to Palestine, Congo, Sudan, Haiti? What, the things that BAP always talks about. And these white people were like, well, that's, our focus is Trump and, his policies. He's the reason we're focusing on him. And this, so I said, you know, Washington, D.C. is, I said the same thing I just said twice here. We may not be a majority Black city, but we are still a significant percentage of this population. And if you are not going to focus on the issues of international policy that are directly connected to the ways we are colonized and oppressed here, then I don't know why you think you can come into our city and tell us what we're supposed to be protesting against. That's very liberal. And the man who was running the thing was like, well, I'm not sure what you want us to say to that, but this is our platform. And that's when I was like, fuck no kings. All right. So please don't tell me what no kings is, because I know what it is not. And I know from firsthand. See, people always think I just be saying shit. I don't generally say anything about anybody or anything unless I absolutely do know what the fuck I'm talking about. And based on a lot more than just what I read in the same articles or posts or whatever social media that you did. No, I actually, yeah, I was in the meeting. And we were all there that day. And we saw those people leave that first No Kings rally because they ended their rally early. The pro-Palestine rally was on 3rd Street, kind of across the street from the Department of Labor, where I was sitting with all of the equipment and the cell phones and the electronics, watching everybody's stuff, doing security in a way. And the No Kings rally was further down Pennsylvania Avenue at what is called Freedom Plaza, which is being ripped up right now for some odd reason because Trump is psychotic. But the No Kings rally ended earlier, than the Palestine rally, and the folks from the No Kings rally walked right past that Palestine rally, walked right past almost all of those people. There was a very, very small, I watched the whole thing, a very small group of people who walked past the rally and kind of slid into the crowd. Most of the No Kings people walked right past that pro-Palestine rally during a fucking genocide. And a lot of those people had Ukrainian flags. Aside from the American flags that were all over the damn place, a lot of them people had Ukrainian flags. So they talking about hands off the FBI, because Trump was ripping up the FBI. So these people had sort of hands off the FBI, hands off what was it? NED, because he defunded the Voice of America, National Endowment for Democracy, I think it was another one of those alphabet CIA soft power agencies. Yeah, remember when Trump was like, we don't need to be doing that shit no more, and people, a bunch of progressives was like, well, that's not a bad thing. But then you had the liberals and No Kings out here in the streets talking about hands off the FBI, hands off the NED, hands off Voice of America, the propaganda, soft power, and coup engines of U.S. imperialism. That's No Kings. and then as far as like recruiting people, now listen, I'm just gonna be real honest with y'all. I'm going to be very honest with you. And I know some people aren't going to want to hear this, but I don't give a shit because we don't have time for your feelings no more. None. For a lot of these folks, if you notice, the No Kings crowds are mostly, not all, not down to a person, not every single one, but the majority of the No Kings crowds are older white folks. They are middle-aged and older white people. So there are certain people that they are not going to resonate with. I stood out there at the Department of Labor with all of our BAP signage, with clipboards, and so people could get the newsletter, and I'm talking to people as they're walking by, and these folks are walking by and they're reading our signs, and they're like, oh, what do you mean? What do you mean NATO is white supremacist? Right? And I'm having conversations with people and they are disturbed at what I am saying. And a lot of people, the vast majority of those people walked away like I had poured poop on them. Like the French do when they get pissed off, and the farmers spray the government buildings with shit if they don't get their way. Yeah, these folks in these No Kings rallies, they are not, most of them are not interested in revolutionary ideology. They're not interested in anti-capitalism. They're not interested in socialism. They're not interested in communism. And I'm not saying that they cannot be uh um I don't know, educated to view these things more favorably. What I am saying is that they are not going to want to have those conversations with people who look like me. That is really just the truth. A lot of these folks do not want to listen to, talk to, be taught by, be guided by Black folks or Indigenous folks or immigrants. They do not. How do I know this is true? Am I saying they are racist? Not necessarily. What I'm saying is they don't see certain people as being qualified enough to tell them something they don't know. They believe the propaganda about people like us, about Black radicals, about socialists, particularly of color. They believe the anti-communist, the anti-American, the enemy within rhetoric that this government and this system has created and used against us throughout the history of organizing in this country. So this idea that folks like us can walk into a No Kings crowd and we can just stand there and be like, listen, Paul Robeson took the petition of Black abuse by this country to the United Nations in 1959, and we've been fighting this struggle, and you need to listen to us because we understand what this system is. This is what we tell y'all. And these people turn around and look at us like we are out of our minds, and then they turn right back around and talk about Trump must go now. And when we ask questions about, okay, I agree, Trump, because see, we are always the ones who are told we have to meet people where they are. We have to meet people where they are. So folks are always telling us, wherever there's a large gathering of people, if you want to build a mass movement, you have to go there. But every fucking month, every damn month across this country, maybe not in every single state, but in every large city, there is somebody's radical revolutionary organization having some damn event that people don't go to. People talk about, oh, well, you have to go to these people. Our organizations have public events just like the ones that I announced on Darker Than Blue a little earlier. 10 people gonna show up tomorrow. 10 people, if that much. And I'm not even talking about us. It's going to be maybe 5 or 10 people outside of us. We will be outside at that metro station doing our speak out. And most people are going to do what they did, walk on by, what those people did at the DNC non-convention, the DNC coronation, when they walk past those pro-Palestine protesters with their fingers in their ears. That's what people do, because see, we've done this. We ain't new to this. Some of us are newer. to this, but we've done these things before. We know how people respond, and we understand that's how people are going to respond. So this is why we keep doing these things, because that is the only way you build a movement. You have to be consistent. So no, going to these events and recruiting people is not going to build the mass movement. The mass movement being built is done in the regular, consistent activities of outreach that organizations do every other day, that is not the one day of this massive, kind of incoherent, liberal focused reform and pressure release activity, right? That's the way we see it. So there are organizations that can show up at this event and fill a room of people, full of people from that event who are curious, because some people are just more likely to listen to other people than they are to us. That, I think that's just true. And I kind of feel like I know that's true, because as a leftist, this is how white leftists have treated us. Do you understand what I'm saying? So if white leftists don't listen to us, what the fuck makes y'all think white people who are not leftists, who have largely not given a damn about what this country has done to us all this time, what makes you think they're going to listen to us now just because they're angry at Trump? Come on, y'all. Now, I'm not saying that there's no utility for these protests. Yeah, I think it's good that people are coming out of their houses, getting up off their asses and doing something. Okay? If people, yeah, okay, great. However, if the thing that people are out in the streets to do is to ensure that the Democrats win in the midterms, and they think that that is what is going to stop Trump's agenda, we've got to call that silliness out. And we don't call it out to shame people. We call it out to explain why it is not going to change anything in this country. And in that conversation, this is where we explain to people, either you are mobilizing and activating for reform so that nothing changes except for this one person who is making you uncomfortable, or you're mobilizing and activating for change, to change the entire system so that those who currently have power and are using it to exploit not just us, but the entire world. Either you want to change that, you want to change the power dynamic in this system, you want the system to be not controlled by the rich and the powerful, the ruling class, but by the workers and the people. Either you want change so that the people have power, or either you want reform so that the ruling class continues to have power. They're just a little bit nicer to you about the way they exploit you. That's the choice that people are faced with in regard to these No Kings protests, and what they are intending to do with those people attending, and what revolutionary organizing is intending to do. I can't tell people what they should want. Well, I do tell people what they should want, but I can't make you choose. I can't, because if I could make you choose, we would have been communist a long time ago. And please understand that communism and socialism are projects. There's no such thing. They are processes. There's no such thing as a perfectly communist country. There's no such thing as a purely social. It doesn't. No, they are projects and processes, and you're always working toward a greater expression of those processes. But do I think that everybody should want? Of course. Of course, everybody should want their government to ensure that their human rights, their basic human needs are met: housing, healthcare, quality education, a clean environment, a job that pays a decent wage, and a safe workplace where you are respected and you have enough leisure time to pursue the things that make you as a human being happy and whole. Everybody not only should want that, everybody deserves that. And the only way we get that, though, the only way everybody gets that is through socialism. Capitalism is not designed to do that for anybody except the ruling class. So that's the change. That's what we have to decide between. Do we want to go the no kings route and continue to let the ruling class have their rights? Because it's not their rights. They're filthy, stinking rich. They own all the money and the means of production, and us. Because while we may not be enslaved in the chattel sense, we are now wage slaves. We must sell our labor in order to survive, in order to be able to have a roof over our head. We have to sell our labor in order to be able to afford food. We have to sell our labor in order to be able to afford to go to a doctor. We have to sell our labor in order to afford sending our children or ourselves to school. In order for human beings to survive, every human being needs housing, food, clean water, and healthcare when they're sick. Everyone deserves that. But these things are commodified in a capitalist system. So the rich don't need to have those things guaranteed for them. They can afford them. The only way the non-rich gets those things is if we take power, if the dictatorship is flipped from a dictatorship of the ruling class, a dictatorship of the capitalists, a fascist dictatorship, which is what this country is now and always has been. It has to be flipped to a dictatorship of the proletariat, a dictatorship of the people. This is why I don't like these imperialists calling these socialist leaders dictators. No, the leader isn't dictator. The leader isn't a dictator. The people are the dictators. The people, the government is dictated to by the people. That's what that means. The government in Venezuela, the government in Cuba, the government in Nicaragua, the government in China. At one point, the government in Guinea-Bissau. At one point, the government in Mali. At one point, the government in Ghana. At one point, do you understand? At one point, these socialists, the government in Panama, the government in Grenada. At one point, these governments were all socialist, and the governments responded to the needs and the demands of the people. That's a dictatorship of the proletariat, when the people's needs are the primary focus of the government and its policies. That is the first priority for a government that is the dictatorship of the proletariat. So no, the individual leader, Nicolas Maduro and Hugo Chavez, were not and are not dictators. The people of Venezuela dictate to the government what they need, and the government responds by giving the people what they need. The same thing in Cuba, the same thing in China, the same. So this is what this government does not want us to know is even possible. Because when we look at just the demographics, just the population size of these countries, there are 330 something plus million people in this country. These other countries have a lot less people in them. Can you imagine What would happen if 330 million people all had access to what you just watched? This interview with this young brother from Venezuela? Can you imagine? Now most of those people would look at it and listen to what he has to say and would obviously dismiss him as, he's just telling lies. He's just, yeah, we know that. But can you imagine if 10% of the population of this country understood the true nature of the governments and the societies and the people in the countries that this government, under every administration, because what did President uh, uh, Pezeshkian say in his letter to the American people? Iran has been subjected to the longest sanctions regime that the US has imposed on anyone. Sanctions are an act of war. Sanctions are really, the actual term is coercive measures, coercive economic measures. Coercive. That's the key word. They're not some nice diplomatic tool. This is the way the US explains it. Sanctions are just a diplomatic tool to bring what do they call them? Governments that aren't doing business with the U.S. the way we want, to bring them back in line. No, no, they're not. Sanctions are an act of war. They're economic warfare designed to punish the people in the country to the point that the people rise up and blame their government for the sanctions that the U.S. is imposing on the country. That's what sanctions are designed to do. And Iran has been sanctioned by the U.S. for longer than I think any other country. So every administration of this government has been waging war on Iran all this time. So please don't tell me this is all about Trump. Yes, he's dropping bombs now. Yes, he and Israel, and it's horrible. But the warfare against Iran has been going on for decades. And there has not been a Democratic president who has not continued that economic and ideological and political warfare against that country. So Trump is merely escalating the war that has been waged against Iran with the intention of changing the regime since the Iranian Revolution, quite honestly. The United States government has punished Iran for overturning their fascist, authoritarian, militaristic US puppet in the Shah, who created a CIA modeled unit, the Savak, that disappeared tens of thousands of dissidents against the Shah regime. So when people today tell that say that bullshit about, oh well, the Iranian government killed 20, 30,000 of their people in the protest, ask them, are you talking about the Shah when his regime disappeared? About that many people who were opposed to his dictatorship? Because certainly you're not talking about the Mossad protests that just happened, that started this mess right now. Certainly you're not. So I think we have to be clear about what organizing is, what protest is, the limits, and the purpose of both, who we are organizing with, who is behind these protests. This is the same kind of issue. This is the same kind of issue that we tried to talk about, that we tried to tell people about with the Rage Against the War Machine rally. You have to know who's behind these protests. Yeah, you do, because who is behind the protest determines what the purpose of the protest is. And if you are engaged in a protest that is being organized and sponsored by a bunch of people whose political um whose politics are anchored in the Democratic Party, whose politics are anchored in returning Congress to Democrat control, returning the White House to Democrat control, right? If your protest is organized and sponsored by people who are asking you to sign on to a database so you can get on the listserv for the Democratic Party so they can send you emails to ask you for money to contribute to the Democratic midterm election campaigns, you should know that. You should know that those protests are designed to serve that purpose. Doesn't matter what kind of signs you have. If you and a bunch of people went out there with Palestine flag, fantastic. The organizers of No Kings don't give a shit. They are not going to say anything from the stage about Palestine. And if there are some locations where there were No Kings protests where people did, that's fantastic and that's wonderful. You have to understand, though, that the national apparatus of No Kings is not going to take up that issue. And that should be a problem for you. Because if they're not going to take up that issue, then they're probably not going to take up Congo, Sudan, Haiti, because these are things that Democrats, they're in support of. The repression, the violence, the exploitation, the warmongering, the genocide. I'm not sure why people would want to be a part of anything that a political party that mocked anti-genocide protesters and their coronated nominee, because ain't nobody vote for her, promised that she would continue funding that genocide. I don't know why people would want to be involved in a demonstration that is organized by entities that are a part of that political party. But you have to know that's who these people are. Because if that is who these people are, then what they're doing is getting you to go along with their agenda, right? That's what it is. And it's kind of hard to have this conversation with people because you don't want to come off as if you are shaming people for not understanding. But it kind of doesn't matter how you explain it. People are just going to take it that way anyway. So you just have to tell the truth, no matter how people accept it. And that's something that I've had to accept because, the response that people have when you try to explain these things to them is never nice. You get accused of all kinds of things. People get really personal. It can be kind of hard. But look, the truth is the truth. You ain't gonna change nothing through these No Kings protests. It's fantastic that this many people got out into the streets. I would just like to raise that if you could do this for No Kings, you can do this for everything else that is going on in your community. You need to find out what else is going on in your community. You need to get involved with these small, Black-led, Indigenous-led, immigrant-led organizations, socialist, communist, anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, international solidarity-focused organizations in your communities or close enough to you so you can get to them. And you need to either support them with your resources if you can, or show the fuck up. Support them with your feet like you did No Kings. And you don't have to go every week if they have a weekly event. You don't have to go every month if they have a monthly event, but support them. You will learn something and they will get your support. They will grow. That is how societies are changed. And then those organizations get together and they build coalitions. and they start to work together. And they start to find the things, the ways that they are united, the things that they have in common with each other, even if they don't agree on every single thing, right? Because every issue is not the same in every location, and that's okay. But you get together on the issues that you agree with. If people, if one organization is like, well, we're not really anti-capitalist, get away from them. Mm-mm. The baseline has to be anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist. You can't just be anti-war for me. Mm-mm. You have to be anti-imperialist. And if you're not anti-imperialist when you show up, y'all in the organization better make sure that people are anti-imperialist by the time you finish teaching them what it is. Do you understand what I'm saying? I hope you do. This is how we build a mass movement. And I'm not saying this from experience because I've never done this before. I'm not sitting here telling you this because I've lived all this long and I've lived through the Black Power movement. I'm 58. I know I was 2 when this stuff was going on. No, but I read. I learn the history. And I don't just read about the history of struggle and liberation and organizing in this country. I read about the history of successful organizing and successful revolutions in other countries. And I haven't read everything. I'm still learning. But this is how these revolutions happened. The people got together, the people talked to each other, people held public forums, and people came and they learned and they read together. They understood the material conditions together. They learned the history together. They talked about what kind of society they want outside of this thing they're fighting right now together. And then those groups of people got together with other groups of people in other areas of the city, in other areas of the country, got together based on what they agree with, and they replicated the whole thing until they built a revolution. They planned, they strategized, and then they moved and they mobilized as one. And the thing about revolution that is it is the frustrating thing. You can't plan when it's time for the revolution to kick off. You can never plan because I mean, look at this. Look at all of this that's going on in this country now. I mean, I kind of feel like if we had been organized, more organized, the bombing of Iran would have been the flashpoint. Really, the genocide in Palestine, in Gaza, should have been the flashpoint. Honestly, the exploitation in Congo and the child slavery and the slave labor in Congo, that should have been the touch. Hell, Libya should have been the touch point, but it wasn't. It wasn't. And I also have to understand that the material, the historical, and the demographic conditions in this country are very different from those things in the countries that have had a successful revolution. The only difference, or the only country that may be similar in size, might be China. That's it. That's the only country I can think of with a population as big or bigger than this country that had a successful revolution. So yeah, learning how successful revolutions in different countries came about is vitally important to understanding how we build revolutionary consciousness and a revolutionary mass here. But the thing that I think we don't understand is that no revolution takes place without the development of revolutionary consciousness. And what is revolutionary consciousness? It is knowing your history. It is knowing that you are a colonized people. It is knowing that you live in the dictatorship of capital and the ruling class. It's knowing that you are not free. And it is knowing that there is freedom elsewhere. There are models that we can follow. and understanding that we have to learn how to be revolutionaries in order to get free. So, yes, there's a lot of reading, there is a lot of study, there is a lot of understanding and talking things out and asking questions and answering questions that has to be done. And now we are at the point where all of this has to be done at the same time that we are mobilizing and agitating. That has always been true, but there's more mobilization and agitation now than before, obviously, because of where we are. So we don't like to, at least me as an organizer, I don't like to focus so much on um all the time we wasted, right? And it's really interesting. I think I have that attitude because I mean the Black Alliance for Peace is 9 years old, y'all. We are literally 9 years old tomorrow. We have only been around for 9 years. There are organizations out here that have been around for 20. And yes, the people who started the Black Alliance for Peace did live through the Black Power movement. They did live through the Civil Rights movement and the leadership in the AARP. And yeah, our elders lived through this. But the formations we have today are also filled with young people who weren't around during that period of time. So we have organizations that are full of people who are learning exactly what I'm talking about right now. So here we are learning to be organizers, and we have to be very careful in thinking that just because now we've got it, we're the ones that are going to bring the system down. Don't be crazy. Don't be nuts, man. As bad as BAP is, y'all, as bad as BAP is, I know my organization is bad. I know we are. We're not we're not empire destroying bad. Not after 9 years of existence, and maybe 5 years of solidified structure, right? And that's not a bad thing because every organization goes through a period of development, just like every country does, just like every person does. You're not the same person today that you were 5 years ago. I hope to God you're not. I hope you learned some things and are a better person, right? Organization is the same way. Every organization, every business, every whatever it is that exists goes through transition and maturity. Organization is the same. It shouldn't be the same as it was when you started 5 years later, right? So there's no way, as much as we do. I love my org, I do, and as much as we love the work that we do, and as much as I do think in some regards we are doing things that not a lot of people are doing. We are making connections that people are not making. We know that. And we are proud of that because that was our intent. This is our idea of raising the consciousness of our people. We're bringing these issues of foreign policy, not just, to the United States, but we're bringing it right down your street. We're explaining to you personally, you, why genocide in Gaza matters to you, where you live, in your city, town, on your street. Right? And we are connecting our issues here with the way our cousins, our relatives around the world are being repressed in the same way. And how it's the same people do. Yeah, we're very proud of our work, but we understand we're a small section. We are a small part of the work that must be done to flip this dynamic in this country, to turn this dictatorship of capital, to turn this dictatorship of fascism into a dictatorship of the proletariat. There is no one organization that is going to carry that revolution out. So no organization should be out here with a big old ego Talk about we are the vanguard. Oh God. No. I'm not even sure that this country can really develop a vanguard. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. But no, the BAP is a small part of this revolutionary process, and all we are doing is continuing the work that Dr. King, Malcolm, Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer, W.E.B. Du Bois, Shirley Graham Du Bois, we are just Claudia Jones, we are just continuing their work. We're not reinventing the wheel, we're not doing anything new, we are just picking up the baton that our founders saw not a lot of people were picking up. But we are not the revolution, because we are just one organization in a country of 330 million people. What y'all think 800 people can do? 800 people who do not own, and 800 give or take a few, 800 people who don't own any media outlet, 800 people that doesn't own the means of production, 800 people who are at the same whims, or actually who are more vulnerable to government repression than most of you, because we out front, we outside. They know who we are. Y'all can sit safely at home and listen to us. We're outside. So we are getting picked off, the radical revolutionary organizations. So we need people to support the work that we are doing. And this idea that we have to run after people who are running after liberals, I can't take that no more, y'all. I can't take it no more. Because see, we have seen, I in particular have seen how that didn't work with the white progressives. And I saw how it didn't work with a whole lot of so-called white leftists who don't ever want to talk about racial issues. They don't want to talk about gender issues. They don't want to talk about trans issues. They don't really want to talk about immigration. So I'm like, what the hell y'all want to talk about then? What are you fighting against if you don't want to talk about these issues that are the ways the empire oppress us in specific ways, differently from the way they oppress you? If you don't want to talk about how we're oppressed too, what the fuck are you fighting for? Oh, your comfort. I get it. Okay. And then after you get what you want, then we'll deal with these other little issues that you don't really care about right now. That is the kind of stuff I have been told by white leftists and white progressives since 2016. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to hear anymore about, if you don't like no kings, you need to come and recruit to. No, you go recruit. You go recruit. We are going to continue to do what we're doing. We're going to continue to advertise and broadcast our work. We're going to continue to invite people to join us. We will go to demonstrations, sure. Yeah. Why not? Of course. We're going to be out there with our signage, but we are also realistic. So we keep our expectations where reality is. And we understand that this, going to these liberal events, cannot be the primary focus of our work. Because if we make that the thing we focus on the most, then we are going to miss all of the time that we should be dedicating to organizing our people. What y'all need to do, what white leftists and what white progressives need to do, if you're serious about whatever political ideology left of the Democratic Party that you claim you have, you need to be organizing those people. Stop telling racialized people that we are the ones who need to go chasing after the white liberals. No, we do not. That has been the history of organizing in this country the entire time, and it has never worked out well. When white people organize themselves, that is how it has to be done. Because you have to remember, people are still very, very indoctrinated. They may hate Trump, but they also still don't like other people who are not like them. They may not hate them. They may not want them to be treated the way Trump is treating them, but they also don't want to deal with whatever issues that we say we have because they think we're exaggerating. And they think the Democrats are doing enough. They're doing all that they can do, and we're just ungrateful. How much longer do you want us to subject ourselves to that shit? I'm not going to. I've been through enough. I am tired of being browbeaten by white people about why I'm complaining so much. I could live in another country. And if I hear one more person say, well, if you lived in Iran, you'd have to cover your head. I was married to a former imam. And I mean, Catholic nuns exist. So a scarf on my head is not that's okay. And so so yeah, I really am glad that Christian was able to come and talk to us about what's really going on in Venezuela. I always really prefer to have the people come tell you about what's going on there than to have me explain everything, even though I go to bring this news back. Um, and I really don't want people to take the criticism of the No Kings protests as criticism of people participating in the No Kings protests. I understand that people are deeply indoctrinated, very confused, and they think capitalism is great. They just think that capitalism can be made a little bit nicer, like it was under the Democrats. People need to know what capitalism is. They need to be taught that socialism and communism are not what they have been taught they are. They need to be told and taught and understand the truth about capitalism. And they're not going to learn that from the people organizing No Kings protests, because the people organizing No Kings don't want capitalism to be destroyed. They don't want this system to be changed in this country. They want this system back under their control, not yours. All right, so I think I should leave it there. Thank y'all very, very much. I appreciate y'all hanging out. Sorry about the weird graphics. Every once in a while, everything goes great, and then something goes wrong. I don't know. It's that's the cost of being cost of being a solo flyer here on the interwebs. But happy anniversary, my beloved Black Alliance for Peace, all my comrades in the Black Alliance for Peace. Happy anniversary to the founders of this fantastic organization. We will continue doing the work until we can't anymore. Hopefully, see y'all out in the streets at the Shaw Metro Station tomorrow at 4 p.m. here in Washington, D.C. And for the rest of you all who will not be able to make it, we will see you next time. And yes, I am going to try to bring back Imprint on Imperialism. I'm not sure what night yet. I'm going to have to talk it over with the platform. But yeah, I think it's time to do that. Yeah. So have a great weekend, y'all. Thank you very much. Peace. Until next time. Eh.